Here's what you missed in the last 10 hours. You had 19 videos worth catching up on, covering everything from AI breakthroughs and microservices reality checks to gaming industry pivots and massive corporate write-downs. Let's dive in. Starting with AI news, we have Roth's latest roundup covering OpenAI lawsuits, Google's security issues, and Grok's new beta features. Unfortunately, the transcript for this one wasn't available, so I can't give you the details Wies was fired up about. But knowing his style, he was probably diving deep into the implications of whatever legal drama OpenAI is facing and how Google's latest security challenges might affect the broader AI landscape. Speaking of AI developments, the AI Daily Brief put out a piece defending tokenmaxxing, though again, we're missing the actual transcript here. This would have been their take on optimizing token usage in AI applications, likely addressing criticisms about computational efficiency and cost management in large language models. We do have some fascinating insights from OpenAI's Thibault Sachiok about how Codex has evolved far beyond just coding. This was genuinely eye-opening. Codex started as a developer tool, but has become critical to how OpenAI itself ships products. Thibault was particularly excited about how Alexander, their lead product manager, was using multiple Codex agents simultaneously during meetings to track launch progress, update documents, and correlate user feedback. The productivity gains were so dramatic that Thibault flat-out said OpenAI's current shipping speed would not be possible without Codex. They need 10 times more engineers to match it. The tool has created bottlenecks in communications and marketing because engineering teams are moving so fast. Thibault demonstrated creating a personalized San Francisco bread map in 4 minutes via voice command, complete with data gathering, spreadsheet creation, and interactive website optimization. The warning he gave was crucial, though. There's a risk of overdelegation, where people lose understanding of problems by delegating everything without using Codex to enhance their own learning. He recommended treating it like a new employee needing clear context and connecting multiple data sources through the 100+ available plugins. Moving to OpenAI's image generation renaissance, their Image Gen 2 is absolutely crushing it with 50% increased usage since launch and 1.5 billion images generated weekly on ChatGPT. Adele Lee and Kenji Hata were genuinely enthusiastic about the improvements. Text rendering finally makes sense and is legible. Multilingual capabilities work globally, and photorealism has jumped dramatically. Kenji described their object counting test evolution. DALL-E 3 could handle 5.8 objects. Image Gen 1 got to 16, version 1.5 reached 2536, and now they can correctly generate over 100 objects in a single image. The breakthrough moment came when they sampled a checkpoint during training, likely an image of a woman overlooking the seaside, and immediately knew it was better than Image Gen 1. Popular trends include recreating famous photos in janky Microsoft Paint style, which Adele noted requires a lot of intelligence to actually create something that is imperfect. The model handles any aspect ratio, enabling unexpected capabilities like 360-degree panoramas. Over 50% of internal OpenAI presentation slides are now created with Image Gen, and educational applications are particularly strong. They mentioned a biology professor creating perfectly accurate graduate-level textbook pages. From AI Engineers Singapore event, we're missing the actual content about the minister, NanoClaw, and various company presentations. This would have been their day one coverage featuring major players like Google, Vercel, and Cursor, but without the transcript, I can't walk you through the key announcements and insights. Similarly, the AI engineer talk on shipping real agents with hands-on evaluations by Laurie Voss from Arize appears to have had transcript issues. This would have been valuable content about practical agent deployment and evaluation strategies. The Microsoft presentation on agent observability gaps by Amy Boyd and Nitya Narasimhan also had missing transcript content. This would have covered the critical blind spots companies face when deploying AI agents in production. Now here's where things get interesting. Skill Leap AI did the ultimate AI showdown between ChatGPT 5.5 and Claude 4.7 Opus, with Google Gemini as the impartial judge across 10 real-world tasks. The presenter was genuinely surprised by Claude's decisive victory, even questioning Gemini multiple times to ensure there wasn't bias. Claude dominated in mini-app creation, 9.4 versus 7.2, YouTube intro writing, 9.4 versus 7.6, landing page copy where Claude created both copy and a functional page, 9.8 versus 7, data dashboards, video storyboards, and teaching explanations. ChatGPT only won in business strategy planning and had more overall platform features for the $20 subscription. What's fascinating is that when the presenter asked Gemini why Claude kept winning, Gemini explained that Claude's outputs were immediately usable for business purposes, while ChatGPT's would require additional designers and strategists to complete the work. Claude consistently used the same design aesthetic and delivered more comprehensive solutions, though ChatGPT was faster at processing. Shifting to enterprise concerns, Microsoft's Anna Hoffman and Bradley covered SQL Server 2016's end-of-life support coming in July 2026. Bradley was enthusiastic about Microsoft's approach, emphasizing they're not looking to make a business out of this transition. The key offering is Microsoft's Cloud Accelerate Factory team, a white-glove service of top professionals who handle complex migrations at zero cost to customers. They cover everything from scoping and testing to mock-ups and providing production migration scripts, plus failback operations. Bradley was particularly excited about the broader scope beyond just SQL. They handle application migrations, analytics migrations to Fabric, SSRS server migrations to Power BI, and essentially any migration to Microsoft cloud platforms. He shared that many attendees at their Atlanta roadshow, including partners and MVPs, were surprised these free migration services even existed. Microsoft Developer also showcased modernization at scale using GitHub Copilot CLI and Cloud Agents. The presenter walked through modernizing Java Social, a realistic multi-repository legacy system with Net Backend, Java Frontend, and Java Background Worker. The breakthrough is shifting from manual IDE workflows to automated parallel processing using cloud coding agents. Instead of spreadsheets and manual coordination, teams can run modernized commands that scan repositories, delegate to multiple parallel Copilot instances, and generate consolidated assessment reports showing the bird's-eye view of complex applications. The presenter emphasized this transforms modernization from one-off projects into regular maintenance integrated with CI/CD pipelines. The serious CTO delivered a brutal takedown of microservices implementation, calling it a scam for most teams. They were clearly frustrated with industry trends, getting particularly animated about performance numbers in process function calls execute in nanoseconds, while HTTP over TLS requires 110 milliseconds, creating a million-fold difference in communication speed. They shared a concrete example where one team moved from microservices back to a monolith and saw API response times drop from 1.2 seconds to 89 milliseconds, a 93% improvement. The financial costs are staggering. Microservices require 25% more compute, Istio sidecars can consume 90% of pod resources, and observability for 50 services costs $50,000 $50,000 annually. Amazon Prime Video's case study showed their serverless microservice stack hit a hard ceiling at 5% of expected load, leading to 90% cost reduction when they consolidated. The presenter cited 2025 CNCF survey data showing 42% of organizations are actively consolidating microservices, with service mesh adoption dropping from 18% to 8%. Their core argument: modular monoliths deliver the same benefits with far less pain for 90% of applications. On the gaming development front, Game From Scratch's Mike was genuinely excited about Anvil level design, a free Blender add-on that brings TrenchBroom-style level design to Blender. He was particularly enthusiastic about the game engine-style navigation controls using right mouse button and WASD keys, expressing frustration with Blender's default navigation. The tool provides rapid texture application, automated hotspot mapping, and cutting tools that maintain texture patterns during extrusion. Mike demonstrated creating buildings, applying materials, and using the hotspot mapping system that automatically applies textures from atlases based on orientation constraints. The tool is GPL licensed and includes 2 workspaces: level design for basic creation and hotspot mapping for automated detail application. Bellular News delivered some brutal corporate reality with PlayStation's $765 million write-down of Bungie's value. The presenter was clearly exasperated with the repeated failures, tracing Bungie's decline from the 2022 acquisition. Despite the $3.6 billion purchase price, Bungie has faced constant struggles. Destiny 2's Lightfall expansion missed revenue targets by 45%, leading to 100 staff layoffs in October 2023, then 220 more layoffs in July 2024, plus 155 staff transferred to PlayStation. Marathon's launch performed poorly with 1.2 million sales, generating $55 million against at least a $200 million budget. The presenter noted the irony that C-suite executives departed with substantial retention bonuses just as the company crashed. CEO Pete Parsons left in August 2025, and PlayStation didn't replace him, effectively taking direct control. This represents one of the most dramatic examples of acquisition value destruction in recent gaming history. Yang Ye was absolutely vindicated discussing the collapse of live service trends. He was particularly enthusiastic about Sega abandoning their Super Game initiative, originally defined as AAA titles incorporating cloud tech and NFTs with global blockbuster budgets. Sega transferred over 100 developers from free-to-play to traditional game development, focusing on revivals of Crazy Taxi, Jet Set Radio, Golden Axe, and Streets of Rage. The broader industry carnage is extensive. Sony scaled back from 12 planned live services to just a few after Concord and Highguard failures. Amazon shut down multiple online games, and even massive budgets aren't guaranteeing success. Yang Ye contrasted this with Capcom's successful approach of focusing on core strengths rather than chasing monetizable trends, growing beloved IPs like Resident Evil, Devil May Cry, and Mega Man. The live service market has proven that players typically stick with 1 or 2 established services, making new entries extremely risky. The Electric Vikings' Sam Evans was genuinely surprised by his own change of opinion about Subaru's EVs after dramatic price cuts in Australia. Subaru cut prices up to $16,000 while simultaneously improving capabilities, making their EVs genuinely competitive with Chinese alternatives. The Subaru Uncharted starts at $59,990, Solterra all-wheel drive at $62,000, and the larger Trailseeker at $64,000, creating only a $4,000 difference between smallest and largest EVs. All models use 74.7 kWh CATL batteries, with ranges from 488,566 kilometers, 150 kW DC fast charging, and crucially, ground clearances over 200, that exceed 98–99% of other EVs. Evans emphasized this reflects the brutal Australian EV market with over 120 models competing, forcing Subaru to abandon niche premium pricing. He acknowledged doing a complete 180 on his previous stance, now calling the Trailseeker potentially the best value for money Subaru ever. Evans was far less enthusiastic about BYD adding Lidar to their cheapest EV, the Seagull. He was clearly frustrated with automotive journalism he considers misleading, arguing this move is pointless marketing hype. His core argument: only 2 companies have functional full self-driving, Tesla and XPeng, and neither uses Lidar. Meanwhile, BYD's current momentous technology is so problematic they're developing replacement systems due to user complaints about the God's IA system trying to drive people off roads. Evans highlighted the broader Lidar industry collapse, particularly Luminar's stock crash from over $600 to under $1. Even Volvo, which initially made Lidar standard equipment, has now removed it entirely from their flagship ES90 and X90 models due to Luminar's failure to meet contractual obligations. The timing is ironic given that media outlets previously critical of Tesla for not using Lidar are now reporting on established manufacturers abandoning the technology. Lunjuk was absolutely disgusted, discussing a Canadian porn company's lobbying effort to shift age verification from websites to operating systems. Ethical Capital Partners, a $400+ million per year pornography firm, is pushing to amend Canada's Bill S-209 so that operating systems like Windows, macOS, and Android handle age verification instead of adult websites themselves. Lunjuk was particularly outraged because this would require every computer user in Canada to undergo age verification rather than just visitors to adult sites. He noted this mirrors Meta's similar lobbying in U.S. states. Both companies want to avoid the financial and legal liability of age verification while still appearing to support it. The good news is these amendments haven't been incorporated into Canadian Bill S-209 yet, which remains focused on adult websites only. Lunjuk called the operating system approach pure evil because it would create databases of children's information, putting families at greater risk. smartyrbx held a live call-in show to decide future video topics, but unfortunately we're missing the transcript details about what the community suggested and which directions they decided to pursue. Finally, Wendell from Level 1 Techs was characteristically enthusiastic about his garbage tier project, building a 200 TB backup system from 60 mismatched hard drives using a NetApp disk shelf. He was clearly amused calling perfectly functional drives garbage, while demonstrating serious technical capabilities. After fitness testing, he lost 10 drives but ended up with 230 TB raw capacity from the remaining 50 drives. The setup uses a complex mixed redundancy ZFS configuration with different RAID levels for different drive sizes. Power consumption ranges from 320 watts, with drives spun down to 800-900 watts under load. Wendell strongly cautioned newcomers to start small with desktop setups, emphasizing the critical need for proper drive testing and SAS controller cooling. He's particularly excited about upcoming AnyRAID technology from Clara Systems that would better handle mixed drive sizes in ZFS pools. That wraps up a packed 10 hours covering everything from AI breakthroughs and corporate write-downs to the reality check on microservices and live services. The common thread seems to be companies getting more realistic about what actually works versus what sounds good on paper.